Now, talking of barrier options, barrier options are also what we call as a first degree exotic. So we can imagine that the barrier option is just one level above a plain vanilla option. So if I had to show this in a simple diagram, and it could look like this. So let's say currently we are at maybe S0. We'll write this as, let's say, a K. This is our strike. Now we go one more step ahead and we introduce one more level. So I'm just drawing one of the ways you can do the barrier. The barrier can be below your current stock price also, but there's just one variation. So this can be a barrier. So that way, things which you have studied as a part of vanilla options can be extended and one can use it for understanding and analyzing barrier options as well. So to understand four popular structures of a barrier option, one is a down and out. So this means the option ceases to exist, and the idea of ceasing to exist is also what we call as a knockout, or just a KO as well. It is a knockout. Because then if you see the connotation as well, right, it is down and out. There's an out mentioned here. So out basically implies that the option will be knocked out. So that way, the meaning of this is the option will cease to exist if the option price moves from its initial level to a certain barrier level during the life of the option and the option gets knocked out. You can have a down and in as well. That way, the option can come into existence. So this can also be thought of as the idea of knock in or KI also. So option comes to life if the asset price hits the barrier level and during the life of the option, and that's why we call it as a down and in option. You can have an up and out option as well. That way the option will cease to exist or it will get knocked out if the asset price moves from its initial level to the barrier during the life of the option. So this can be thought of, so the diagram which I shown above can be thought of as an up variety. Why up variety? Because we have the barrier which is above the current stock price S0. You can have an up and in as well. So that way the option will get kicked in or the option comes into existence if the asset price moves from its initial level to the barrier level during the life of the option. And as mentioned earlier, out options are also called as KO or knockout options, and in options are also called as knock-in or KI options. Now, barrier options are cheaper as compared to plain vanilla options, and the reason behind that is there is a barrier level which is involved. Because then, if you look at a plain vanilla European option, we simply compute the payoff, isn't it? There is no condition which we use in order to compare a barrier because there is no presence of a barrier in the European option. But then for a barrier option, we have that extra threshold which we keep on monitoring, and it is because of that the chances that the option could get knocked out could go up as well as the volatility increases, and that's the reason as to why barrier options are generally cheaper as compared to a plain vanilla European option. So let's take a simple example. Now, we'll take a certain asset which is currently trading at USD 30. And let's say the dealer wants to have a European call option with a strike price of 32. Further, let's say that the dealer has made some bit of analysis at their end and they are of the view that the asset price will not fall below USD 28 during the life of the option. So let's say this is their analysis. So based on this, there could be two potential alternatives which they can explore. One is purchasing our good old plain vanilla option with a strike price of 32, or they could purchase a down and out call option with a strike price of 32 and a barrier level of 28. Now, option B is expected to be cheaper as compared to option A, i.e., option A is expected to be more expensive. Uh, and the main reason behind that is if you see for option A, we are simply buying a plain vanilla option and everything is simply based on the strike price of 32. There's no chance that the option will cease to exist. Now, because we are looking at a barrier option in alternative B, there is a chance, since it's a down and out option, there is a possibility or a probability that the option might cease to exist if the barrier level is hit during the life of the contract. And it is because of this probability that the option can get knocked out. Option B or this alternative B becomes to be cheaper as compared to alternative A. Now, a few key properties which you come across in barrier options is they exhibit discontinuities in payoffs across the barrier. Generally, we'll observe that whenever we look at plain vanilla options, their value is expected to increase as the volatility increases. So that way, both for call and put options, you'll see that there will be an appreciation in their price uh, as we see increase in volatility. However, this same idea may not be applicable for a barrier option. Typically, for example, let's say a knockout option. Because then with the increase in volatility, there are chances that the option and the option price can also become very, very volatile. And there's an increased probability that the barrier condition might be hit. And if the barrier level is hit, then the option can be knocked out as well. Another design of a barrier option is what we call as Parisian options. So Parisian options are the one whereby for a certain knockout or a knock-in condition to be proved, the asset price needs to stay above the barrier level for a certain specific time duration. So you can have one variety whereby, let's say, if you have a stock price, let's say if it increases, it just hits the barrier and that's it. So it gives you knock in or knockout. But for a Parisian option, it can be a little different. So the design could be like this. So you have this. So this still remains your barrier. Just to show it in simple diagrammatic terms, you have S0. So this increases. If this kind of a thing happens, if you see that during this time frame, the underlying asset has stayed above the barrier level. And that way, for the Parisian option contract, this time duration T will be specified. So in case the underlying asset remains above the barrier level during this time, that is going to decide whether you have a knockout or a knock-in has happened. So just another variation for barrier option. Now, there are other variations which are available. So you can have maybe a discrete barrier as well, whereby the barrier condition will not be checked continuously, but there can be specific times at which the barrier will be checked. So it can be thought of as like this. So whereby this is your barrier level. But then if you observe that not at all times the barrier is going to be checked, only whereby we have shown these red colored lines is where the barrier level gets checked. In these blanks in between, even if the underlying hits this blank, it will not be treated as a hit on the barrier. So just another design for a barrier option.